welcome to Foppy Upcycle. I'm on there, aren't I? I've just been filmed for the other channel. Hopefully you watched the last video. In that video you'll know that I'm trying to show my friend Sharon how to make her first dress. I think it's the first one, isn't it?
Oh God, yeah.
And this time we're going to talk through the pattern and maybe do some sewing, just depending on how long it takes, just really to see if Sharon understands what it says on the pattern. Because I mean, a lot of us, especially me, I tend to skip past a lot of the instructions on the pattern because I've been sewing for a long time. I don't necessarily need to read everything. Unless it goes wrong, then I look back. But first off, Sharon has had family staying, and she's your
Daughter's partner.
Daughter's partner is good at creating, and she had the suggestion of Sharon making a jacket from. It's a very lightweight blanket, isn't it?
Yes,
This is the colours, and I'll slot in some photos of Sharon wearing it. But it's quite a simple make, really, isn't it? Because she just drew round an existing jacket thing to get the sleeves and the body. And it's got a nice sort of blanket stitch edge on it as well. That was on there, wasn't it? You didn't put that on.
No, Marley was very creative in making sure that all the blanket stitch was in the right
at the
place.
Edge, so she obviously knows what she's doing. So, and because the joy using a blanket is it doesn't fray or anything, and it just is a really nice, simple put together, really.
Yeah,
but it's really lightweight. So Sharon made that with help, but you did the sewing, didn't you?
I did most of the cutting out. Marley drew round it for me with the seam allowance and kind of fitted it onto the blanket so we had enough.
Similar to what we did for the dress.
And to make sure the blanket stitch was in the right place, I then cut it out and Marley told me which bits to sew. So,
right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Right, for those that didn't see last week, why not?
Yeah, where were you?
You can go back to last week, but this is the dress that Sharon is making. It's a bit of a mixture between the two options. We're going to do the dress, but with that sleeve, I think you decided, didn't you?
Yes, you didn't want the gathered sleeve.
Yeah, you don't want the gathered sleeve. No. So this is called the Fiona set. This was
It's quite fun.
It's because one of your siblings is not siblings.
Offspring.
One of your offspring is Fiona. This was a freebie I got from a magazine. If I can, I try not to ever buy a pattern unless it's again at a charity shop or a boot fair, flea market, Big Grenier, wherever country you're from. I've recently, before I go on to this, I've recently downloaded a lot of PDF patterns because they're free. Obviously, they're only free to the point until the point that you've got to get the paper and some ink to print them off. I keep them on my computer, put in a file, and I will only use them if I decide to use them, rather than all that paper and ink being wasted. And I realised I was telling you, wasn't I?
Yeah. Do you think it would be worth doing it on one of the big machines, printing it when you're going to use it?
Well, some people do, don't they?
Supermarkets.
That's what some people do, and because they do there's a bigger size, isn't there, called is it AO or something like that?
Okay.
And you can do that as well, but I think you got to go to particular shops because not all the machines are that big.
Big enough.
But I think I need to look into it because I mean, obviously, when you do it at A4 size, there's a lot of sticking together. I think I might do a video when I print one off to actually show you, because some would find it a bit mind-blowing in a way to put them together, but so obviously you've got to think about the ink and everything, unless of course you're lucky to have a laser jet printer where you're not wasting as much ink and everything. So we thought we'd go through this. Obviously on the back you've got, and I could have to turn the camera around because you won't know what we're looking at. Okay, so on the back here, you can see it's just showing you what's in the pack. what fabric you'll need, and then it's about interfacing how much of that you'll need, and then you've got, I don't know, a loop turner. I just didn't notice that was on there. Oh, that's probably for turning the ties inside out, isn't it? Right, okay, so we've got, pack includes pattern pieces or sheets times 3 and an instruction sheet.
Right.
So obviously you have to cut those out before you start. It tells you recommended fabrics. I'm trying to get this thing in focus. And this one, it says viscose, lightweight, what does that say? Can't read it behind the camera. Linen, lightweight linen and lightweight cotton. Then you'll need, it says 112 centimetres wide or 44 inches. And then says for the long sleeve version 3.4 metres, and then for the short sleeve version 2.9. We're going for the short sleeve version, but we've still got plenty because we're using a duvet cover, so we've got plenty of fabric.
Yeah, it was surprising really because it's only a single duvet cover, isn't it?
But it's just a lot of it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fabric.
Interfacing 30 by 40 centimetres, which obviously I'd imagine most people have got some in their house and they'll just cut it out of what they've got, but you ordered some, so you'll have a big chunk as well.
Yeah.
The loop turner is or blunt-ended chunky sewing needle. Basically, it's to turn. There's a tie on the back. I think that's what it is.
Yeah,
I'm
so
just
imagine
looking
it's
at it
at
now.
the back of the neck there.
Yeah, just about. Can you see it there? I'm not sure. There's a very tiny loop anyway. In fact, I probably wouldn't necessarily turn that inside out, because if it is just that short bit, I'd just fold it again and then probably hand stitch it together, because it's just too fiddly for me. And then you've got your size chart. So at the moment we're going for the mixture between the two larger sizes, aren't we, that on this pattern.
We measured me, didn't we?
We did measure last time, but there's no guarantee that it's going to be right, so until we put it on you, we won't really know. Then you've got seam allowance, they say is a centimetre. I can't remember the last time I used inches, to be honest. So let's find the instruction sheet.
American viewers will be using 8 of inches.
Yeah, I usually try and put the
it's good
English.
that it's pictures. Is it always pictures?
No, it didn't used to be.
Yeah,
this is the patterns
see.
now are quite good, because it does make beginners, if you like, a little bit more aware of what's what. So this just shows how to lay out the fabric. And again, if you're a beginner, that's a lot of help, but generally you don't, in my experience, you don't always need as much fabric as they say, but they're allowing for mistakes, I suppose. And then it shows you about the markings that you see on there, like you get arrows and you're going to get darts, they'll all be marked on it. So stitching terms explains all of those.
Okay.
So if you read those, you see if there's anything there you don't know about.
Right side, wrong side, I would understand that. But it does say here that the wrong side is usually plain or duller in appearance, so that's quite good. If there is text along the selvage, this is usually printed on the right side. I didn't know that. Machine tack. Use a long stitch length to hold a section in place. Yeah, I understand that. Finish the seams. Finish the raw edges with a zigzag stitch or an overlocker. Yeah, I would have understood that. Pressing, ironing, yes, rather than ironing is actually pressing. Understitch. Stitch close to the seam line, usually on the side that will be on the inside of the garment, such as the facing.
You're lost there, aren't you?
I am. This will hold the seam allowance in place when the garment is worn. No, don't understand that at all.
You basically on the seam, I can show you, like if you were doing on the seam there, it might say to how did they word it? Was it understitch? Yeah. So you do a stitch very close to that seam, but making sure that the seam allowance, that sort of extra, that flap of fabric is one way, and then doing that stitch holds it flat so it's not moving about everywhere. It makes it sit better on your body.
Okay.
I think you've seen me do it before, but you've
Probably
probably
haven't
forgotten.
even realised
No.
you're doing it. Yeah. Top stitch. Stitching usually from the right side of the fabric to hold seam allowances in place, or can be used as for decorative purposes. So again, I've heard you talk about.
Well, I
top
think we've both
stitching.
talked about that. We like a
Yeah.
top stitch, don't we? I think it does seem to hold it flat and it just looks neater.
Yeah, yeah. Toile, toile, a test garment, often made from calico or muslin to check the fit. Now, I wouldn't do that in a million years, but I mean, if I've seen people who are perhaps making their own wedding dresses or something, where that fit and look's going to be really important.
Yeah.
You may make a toile first, mightn't you? But
I think most of the garments that we do, and we're not spending a lot of money on the fabrics,
yes,
you might want to take the risk
yes,
rather than
that
do
would
it, because
be an
that's
extra cost.
and
wouldn't
me
it?
being an impatient nature as well. Doing it twice is like, what? And also, personally, although as I say, if you're going to use an expensive one, it's worth doing. But I see it as a waste of fabric.
Yes.
Unless you can make a garment that is going to, you could wear that as well. I just feel it's a waste.
Yeah.
I suppose you could, in some ways, unpick it all and use that as a pattern another time, each piece.
I don't know.
But yeah, I'm too impatient.
Yeah.
And I just don't bother, basically.
Well, I'm the same with knitting, because they always tell you to do a tension square, don't they?
Yeah.
So
I've never done that.
I've never done that, because I think, if I did a tension square and it told me that I was knitting too tight or too loose, I don't think I could adjust.
No, I know what you mean.
Knit, so what's the point?
Yeah, you knit how you knit.
I knit how I knit, and I know I knit tight, but I wouldn't know how to adjust it anyway, so I just take a bit of a chance on what the garment's going to be like.
Yeah. While on this subject, because I was talking about PDF patterns, one thing I forgot when printing off my first one, they give you a little square.
Right.
Usually it's an inch square, and you have to sort of sync that with your printer, so that when you print off your PDF pattern, it prints to the right scale.
Oh, I see.
And I didn't do that, and then I wondered why my thing I was making was too small.
Right.
So it's important to do that. If it's got it on there, and even on one of the ones I looked at the other day, and it's got this big stop, adjust your printer to this before you do this.
Okay.
So remember that. So yeah, is there anything else on here? Where have we got to?
We're just down to here. I will say, I don't understand why they don't include a seam allowance on patterns, and you have to add it yourself.
It depends on the pattern.
Does it?
Yeah.
Because I think
these have all got it included.
Oh right.
This is
I find
included.
that so difficult.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're probably going back, in my experience, you're probably going back quite a while.
Where they didn't.
Because
Right.
you used to be able to buy. I've got like something that came out of an old sewing box, actually, was this wheel that was a certain radius. Do you remember the spirograph?
Yes.
Well, this is a bit like a wheel from a spirograph.
Oh, so is it going to make holes in the fabric?
No, you put your
right.
pencil in the middle and run it around the edge of the pattern, and it will score the correct line all the way around the edge. So that's your seam allowance, because that's how they used to do it.
Right.
Whereas now it's usually included, but always read your pattern to check that it's included.
Yeah.
Because and I still have to check, because I'd say more modern patterns their seam allowance is usually a centimetre,
Yes.
whereas back in the day it was very often half
an
inch,
inch.
which is 5/8, I think. No, hang on, half inch. in centimetres. I'm confused with.
There's 2 point something.
I'll put it on the screen
centimetres in
anyway,
an
but
inch.
yeah, it'd be half an inch
Half an
usually.
inch, yeah.
The same, but mostly now it is a centimetres, but it is always worth checking. As I said, on here it says there, where we go, there it says there a centimetre, and that's 3/8 of an inch. So,
Right, yeah.
Right,
Okay. So then it goes on
you've
to
got as far
cutting
as
out.
top stitching and twirl. We did that. So then cutting out. What does it say for cutting out?
Step 1, from the main fabric cut, and then it's telling you how many of each piece of pattern you need, and it's also telling you whether you do it on the fold or not.
Yep.
So it says bodice front 1 on the fold.
Yeah. So what it's doing is reinforcing what's actually marked on the patterns. So I mean, this one says cut 2 on fold. So somewhere on the line on this piece of pattern, there you go, it'll have these arrows, and it's blatantly obvious.
Yeah.
Place on the fold.
So
Well, when we were cutting it out, you weren't quite sure because there was a seam, wasn't there?
Yes.
And you was thinking that as a fold, and it's not. A fold is basically, there's no stitches there. It's just the fold in the material. So that means that when you open that up, it's twice the size.
Yeah.
And
so most of the time when you're cutting out, are you cutting out on fabric that's actually folded in half?
Yes.
Yeah.
The only time you don't need to do that is if it's just cut 1.
Yes.
But as we did, we cut 2 interfacings out because it didn't matter because it's only a small thing. So
most times you're folding your fabric in half, so then you're placing things on the fold and you're getting 2 of them after you've cut them out.
Yeah. Or
I know
one.
That sounds really
yeah,
basic.
or 1 if it's on the fold.
Yeah.
But there's going to be some people that haven't necessarily stitched very much at all. Like, you've never really made something other than that jacket now.
Yeah,
but
I
that
didn't
wasn't
do
following
that with the
instructions.
pattern.
That was exactly.
The only thing before this that I made with a pattern, which was much heavier on your involvement, was when I made those pyjama trousers, and they were very, very simple, weren't they?
They are really, yeah. What's the next one it says on there?
It
actually
says bodice front 1 on the fold, bodice back 1 pair, sleeve 1 pair,
yeah.
upper tier 2 on the fold.
Now the bodice front is on the fold because it's going to be 1 piece.
Yes.
And the bodice back is 2 pieces because it's going to have a seam at the back, and sometimes it might be that you're going to put in a zip in.
And well, we know it's got a loop.
It's got that loop. It's not very clear, but she's got a loop there at the back, which has a button and a loop. Sometimes I don't always see the need for that. Sometimes it's just a little feature. But a top I made recently, it had a loop, but the neck hole itself was so big it didn't really need it. You just put it over your head.
No, and I can pull overhead.
So yeah, this is another one. Now this is a cut 1 on the fold, and this is your dart.
And that's very complicated. If you're looking at that,
why is it complicated to you?
Because I think there's lots of different lines, and I wouldn't know where to cut.
Right. So that is where you need. They usually come with a guide. Like on there, you can see. It actually says it there as well.
Right,
but so you
from underneath, and then it's clearer, isn't it?
So these lines, if you look, you've got a dot and a dash. You've got a straight line. You've got tiny little dashes. Each line is a different pattern. So what you look at is the size you want.
So we would do it. Well, let's look at another size. It might
Yeah,
be
do it so it's clearer. Yeah. So if you was size 8. It's almost like a normal running stitch pattern, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you would just follow those lines, and that is where you would cut along, or like a lot of people do, they trace the pattern rather than use the original. They trace it from this pattern so that this doesn't get ruined, because generally this is going to be a thinner paper. I've only ever done that a couple of times, but so yeah, and we've got a hole here with this. We're following this. Where's it gone? There.
Yeah.
I just noticed that's in the wrong place, that dart. We have to double check what we've done on that. That might have been my pattern looking at it. Anyway, so yeah, so you can put a pinhole there for the end of the dart. But yeah, so you've got your sizes. Look at the line, the pattern for each of those sizes, and just follow it around and carefully cut that.
Right, so if you're the only person who was ever going to use this and you're a size 8, you would just cut it to your size.
Yeah, I would, to be honest, but
if, maybe, your size may change, or a couple of people are sharing a pattern, you might want to keep it whole and trace it round.
I'll tell you what I have done before. I've cut it to my size, but then kept this bit that I've cut off.
Okay, so you could
so
reattach
that I could reattach it with a bit of tape or something if I wanted to make it the larger size again or whatever.
All right. I understand that a little bit more now.
I'm trying to think, where else was it on the list?
Right, so we've got front neck facing and back neck facing. Now is that the other material?
That is...
Is that the interface?
No, that's where I used to get...
Right.
Because they used to call that...
Facing?
Yeah, facing or interface, and they used to call that. Yeah. But also the iron-on stabiliser...
Right.
...used to be called facing as well. Well, in my day.
Right.
So that... I used to get quite confused with that. And in fact, sometimes, depending on what the fabric is...
I can see now that interfacing is underneath there separately.
Yeah, I can't find the pattern for that. But yeah, this bit... That is your facing, that there is your facing in the fabric, and that is what generally you're going to need the iron-on facing for, this stabiliser.
Okay. And that's just to give it
so
a
you can
bit
see
of
there,
form, isn't
see
it?
that, that white, it just shows you the facing or interfacing or stabiliser has been attached.
Okay.
Oh yeah, look, it's just showing you there about turning that thing inside out.
Yeah. So this is actually just to give the neckline a little bit of stabilising, so a little bit of
stability,
stiffness, so it lays better.
Yeah.
Okay.
And very often that's where your understitching and your top stitching will come in around the neck to make it neat and lay flat.
Okay. All right. So it then says about the rouleau strap, which is the button loop.
Yep, so that's that.
Right. Now it's saying cutting that on a diagonal grain. No, I don't really understand grain.
Well, that's like cutting on the bias.
Don't understand that either. I was just kind of grab a little bit of fabric.
Yeah, you remember we spoke about the arrows. That usually follows the bias or the pattern. See, I'm not very good at that. Hands up.
Yeah, I don't understand.
Hands up. I'm not very good at finding the bias, but all I can say is there are plenty of YouTube people that do. So if you really can't remember, then obviously go and ask them how you find out. But generally, if you find out where the threads run on a cut piece, and you can watch which way it runs through the fabric, that is generally where your grain is.
Right, okay.
So, but this is that. What was that saying to do for that?
On the diagonal grain. This is just for that tiny little loop.
Yeah. See, now I wouldn't be worrying about that.
No.
It's such a small piece of fabric. I'd cut it out of anything.
I suppose it would just make it a little bit more stretchy, would it?
Or maybe more flexible when you bend it.
Yeah.
Possibly. But I've not had a problem with it, especially something as small as that.
And it's then saying about cutting out your interfacing, and press the front and back neck interfacing pieces to the wrong side of the fabric front and back neck facing pieces, which is what we were talking about here. So it is attaching, pressing, because they're iron-on usually, onto your pieces. So you put it on, it says WS, and we discussed that there, wrong side of the fabric front, because you obviously don't want to see that when you're wearing your dress.
No.
Step 4, finish all raw edges with a zigzag stitch or overlocker. I would say that's preference, wouldn't you? Or would you say it's necessity?
I mean, not everybody. Some people are hand sew, so they're not they haven't got a machine, they might not be able to do that. If you've got an overlocker, fantastic, it's great to use, and it does neaten things up, because everything you buy professionally has generally got an overlocker stitch on it. Has it got on there? Take it back. Can you see?
No, it's not very
No,
obvious,
that's
is
just
it?
the hem that's not been done. It might be on one of your seams, but and as a lot of sewers will tell you, if you haven't got an overlocker, you can zigzag around. And I've done this because sometimes I just really could not be bothered to re-thread my serger or overlocker, or I've not had the right colour threads, and so I just think, right, I'll just zigzag it. But I do prefer to serge or overlock. The only other thing I would say, what they used to do back in the day, was they would have maybe allowed a little bit more fabric, and they'd have turned and hemmed and done a really nice, and then pressed it flat, so they would have turned that under. Can't do it one-handed, but sorry. So they would have turned that under and then done a really tiny hem all the way around and stitched it.
Yes, I see what you mean.
Another option, of course, is pinking shears.
Yes.
If you haven't got a zigzag thing on your machine, even. I mean, I'm not even sure if the old Singer type machines even do a zigzag.
Yeah, it might just do
I think it's just running stitch.
Stitches.
That's a new one. So another option is to use pinking shears.
Yeah.
And
Which
cut around the edge.
But I've probably blunted because I used to use them to make Christmas tags.
Using your fabric scissors on other things.
Did you notice I've put?
Yeah, you've attached it now, just so that you know that's your sewing
these
scissors.
Went missing.
Well, yeah, they was in the obvious place of the kitchen drawer, weren't
they? Because someone, I don't even know if it was me, thought, oh, kitchen scissors. So they are definitely fabric scissors now.
Yeah. So what else a bit? So this list here is telling you what. It's just reiterating what is on these, because on each pattern it will tell you how many you need to cut. So I mean, if you are running out of fabric and then you suddenly notice, oh, I only need one of those, you can then open the fabric up and cut that, and then you've got some spare fabric.
Yes. So we're now on the making. Can you see?
The making up.
Or is it? Yeah, the making the dress and top.
Yeah.
And it does spend a little bit of time on the rouleau strap. So with right sides together, fold the rouleau strap in half so the long sides are matching. That's straightforward. Press. Sew down one long raw edge with a 1 centimetre seam allowance, leaving a long thread ends which are then tied together. Oh, okay.
Is that for pulling it through?
I don't know. Shall we read the next bit? Trim the seam allowance to 5 millimetres. Insert a loop turner through the tube. Pull the thread end loop and fabric through the tube to turn inside out. Right,
so what they're saying is, if you're tying the threads together, it's basically to make sure that seam doesn't come undone, because when you turn it inside out, and you're going to push it through, the force of pushing it through could force that seam to come undone. So it's just a safety thing, really. But as I said, if it was me, I wouldn't necessarily always do it that way, depending on my mood at the time. But I would probably, on my mood at the time, I would be folding it in like this. Obviously it's very small, that's why I'm a bit reluctant to turn it through. But I'd do that, and then I would do that, and then I would hand stitch along that outside seam.
Right.
And it's going to take seconds because it's such a small thing. And then you can always top stitch it afterwards. But when it's that small, it's quite hard to get under the foot of the machine.
Yes.
But yeah, that's just another option if you find doing it their way difficult. There's so many different gadgets and ways they say to do it now. Like one way is to actually, between the two pieces of fabric, is to have a thread. I run across the thread, and then when you get to the end, you start pulling on the thread, and that brings that top end through.
Right. Okay.
I haven't yet. No, I did. I lie. I did try it once. It wasn't too bad.
So now we're on to sewing the bodice front and back. So it's these
So
bits.
this is now, see, now you're getting the numbers here relating to the pictures here.
Yeah.
So you know where to look. So you've got, so what is that? Is there a number on that?
That's
Just a
just
step one.
the
That was
little-
that.
Yeah. So now we're on press all the fabric pieces. I didn't realise how much ironing was involved in sewing. I went to a sewing class, and the difference it makes is huge. And I would say to people,
I'll tell
always
you,
iron if you can.
as I was saying, I've been doing, I think I might have said it in the podcast actually, but I've been making a paper piecing quilt, and obviously it's all lots of, I think they're 10 centimetre squares, and some of them have come out of my scrap box obviously, and I went through and I had to iron every single one the other day. It took a while, but it's made such a difference for putting the hexagon paper piece on and folding it over. It's worth doing.
Yeah. So right, press all the fabric pieces, finish the centre back raw edges of the bodice. So this is what we're talking about here.
The centre back,
And the back piece, step 2, with right side together.
So you notice where you got a bit of back and forwards. That's step 2, which is there.
That one there.
Okay, so you just got to keep flicking backwards and forwards to find the number.
Right side together, pin together the centre back edges of the bodice back, sew up to the marker point, leaving the section above open. Press the seam allowances open. Right, so you're sewing up the middle here.
Yep.
But you can see the little notchy bit there, can't you?
That's it, yeah.
I remember us doing that when we cut it out.
Yep.
And that's where you would stop, because that's that little opening with the
loop. That's right.
And then they've pressed the seam open
Yep.
there. So that looks... Yeah.
I still remember when I pressed open my first seam, I was so pleased.
Again, it makes such a difference as to how neat it all looks, doesn't it?
And we're talking basically basic seams here, because there's French seams, and and I love the look of a French seam, but I've never done, well, not since school. I haven't done a French seam since school.
I barely remember school. Right, sew the darts on the bodice front and press them downwards. So do people know how to sew a dart?
There should be, it's here. They're not actually showing that very well, but the dart is there. So, that was the one we just showed with the pointy bit. Once that's sewn together, it will obviously stand up. I don't know if I haven't got a dart on me. You haven't got a dart on you either, have you?
So, no.
But generally, the dart is going to make the top fit better across the bust. So and it's usually, again, you've got a seam allowance, so you press that upwards. It said, didn't it? I'm sure it's upwards when you do a breast. When you do a breast bust seam.
Don't iron your breasts.
So it's not on a picture there,
There
is
isn't,
it? So
actually.
they've made that a bit sort of obvious. So let me find, where's that bodice bit again? So that is what you'll have in your fabric, and then you're going to pinch that together and then do your seam, and then it will sit up like that until you press that over there, so then it's flat.
Well, and then you can, probably, if we turn over now, you can see the effect that would have on your top.
Yeah,
Just to
exactly.
give you a
So
bit
then
of
you've got that.
shaping.
Yeah.
Yeah, clever. Yeah. Could have done a better photo there.
Yeah, it was a bit, that's down there.
Yeah. Right, press them downwards, it says.
Oh, it was downwards, not upwards. Yeah, that made
That
sense.
is picture 4. With the right side together, right sides together, join the bodice front to bodice back at the shoulders. Press the seam. To me, that's quite straightforward. That's the sort of thing you'd have to do in
So that's
That's
it's
four,
basically in
isn't
the
it?
same pitch.
Yeah,
Did
yeah.
it say stage 4 on the thing? It was here, wasn't it? Was that? I can't read that from here.
The darts is 4. It doesn't say anything else then.
Oh, so there's no number on the shoulder seam.
No,
Okay.
it's quite. I mean, it
is straightforward.
Even
You
do
can
that.
do shoulders right.
Yeah. So we're joining the back and the front basically.
Yep.
At the shoulders.
shoulder.
So press the seam allowance towards the back and top stitch on the right side.
Yep.
Okay. And then we're on to the neck facings. Finish the raw lower edges of the front and back neck facing pieces. Okay, let me say that again. Finish the raw lower edges of the front and back neck facing pieces. So I've got 2 pieces, the front and back neck facing pieces, and I'm finishing the raw lower edge.
Right.
So
Is there
these
that's them? Yeah.
That's these pieces. So is
Now
this
it's when it says finishing.
right?
Now they have a guide, don't they, to what they are calling. So does it say finishing there?
Finish the seams.
And what do they mean by that?
Yeah. Finish the raw edges with a zigzag stitch or an overlocker. So
Okay, so
and
that's what you do on that.
and this is the. Did it say lower seam?
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
So I'm zigzagging or overlocking this seam, aren't
Yeah,
I? At the
that's
bottom
it.
here.
Yeah. You got a zigzag on your machine, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we can do that.
With right sides together, pin and sew the interfaced. So it's assuming we've already done our interfacing, neck facing pieces at the shorter edge. So then we're going to attach them to each other here. Is that right?
Read it again. So even I got lost there.
With the right sides together, pin then sew the interfaced
Oh, that's
neck
right, yeah.
facing pieces at the short
So you
edges.
want 2 short pieces. You've got 2 long. You don't need 2 long. Right. Here we go. So that means. That's it. So right sides facing. And that. So you're going to join those, making sure they've got the right. If it's not the right angle, then it's on the right. That's it. So then you're going to stitch there and there. Then that will make a complete neck. Okay.
So in there.
Yeah.
And we've got that little piece there.
Well, yeah. That will come to that opening on the neck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Seam allowances open. Finish the outer raw edge only all around.
Yeah. So that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it makes sense to stitch those together. Those should meet your shoulder seams when you stitch them.
Right.
So then, obviously, once you've got them all together, then just do the whole thing in one go
Okay.
for finishing.
The right sides together. Pin the neck facing piece to the bodice neck edge.
Yep.
Okay. Are we still over here picture wise?
I don't know what number you're on. I can't see it. It's too small.
So we're talking about doing
That's
that.
it. That's all together and
then
finished.
we're pinning that to the bodice.
Yeah.
That we've,
And that's what I
yeah.
meant about those seams meeting your shoulder seams.
Right. So we've pinned that on. Aligning the shoulder cross seams, hand tack in place, and then sew.
Yeah. So I mean, that's another thing that I think is quite important to tack. I mean, some people just do it with pins. As Catherine Sews does. I mean, she's so confident that she does
Yes,
it just
yeah.
with pins, so it's not a problem to her. And it depends on what I'm doing, but if it's a fiddly thing, I'd say it's everything's likely to keep moving. It's best to tack it.
Especially as an amateur, you know, tacking just makes me feel confident that I've got everything in the right place.
Yeah.
That's step 4. So we're on 6 and 7 now. Cut notches into the curved edge of the seam allowance and clip the cross seam allowance at the centre back to 5 millimetres. I got lost there. So cut notches. So I know what the notches are for. So you're just making little notches. So it gives it a little bit of a circle.
Yeah, I mean, and now going on to that, something again, it's from Catherine So's actually made me think. But yes, you can either cut slits all the way around, or what the most common thing is people would say to cut triangles.
Little triangles.
Because then when you turn it back the other way, they all cross over, and it makes it just lay flatter.
It lays flat, doesn't
But
it?
another way of doing it, someone said, why don't you just use pinking shears?
Right.
Because that's
triangles
all the way along. And
Yeah.
even she said, I'd never thought of that.
Right.
And she said, so it's such an easy way to do it.
So right, what does it say?
And you go close to the seam allowance with it.
Right, cut notches into the curved edge of the seam allowance. So right, that's curved edges. Right, and clip the cross seam allowances at the centre back to 5 millimetres. I have no idea what that means.
I'm lost actually there. Is there a number?
7.
Right, so that's
Oh,
where...
it's taking that bit off the end.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's just the neck. You've gone right around the neck. That's the bit where it's the opening at the back. Then you're just cutting the corner off just so there's not any bulk when you turn that back the other way.
Right, let's get rid of the bulk.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
So I mean, there you can see.
I'm getting thirsty. Do you want to
See there, it's cut there. It'll just when you turn that back, it'll it'll be less bulky. That's it. You can't really tell in this picture properly, but you folded the loop.
Yeah, that's what it
in
says
there.
about attaching the rouleau
Yeah.
loop. Fold the rouleau loop into a U shape and insert it under the open section of the back neck facing. Align the raw edges, adjust to fit your button size and tack stitch. So basically you're just adding a loop, even though I know that.
and obviously putting it on the inside
Yes.
and then stitching it down. Okay, next.
Yeah. Pin the back neck facings at the short edge to the bodice back and sandwich the rouleau underneath. So you're putting the two edges together and the loop is trapped between the two layers.
If we look at the picture here,
Yeah.
you can see there it's been folded. That loop is in between two layers. So that interfacing is there. And this is the top of the main fabric, and the rouleau, as they're calling
Actually, you
it, is
can
between the
see
two.
it quite clearly in that one,
that's
can't
it.
you?
Yeah.
When you're
So you can see it's been trapped in between and then top stitched over to make sure it will make it nice and neat.
So in the tiers, not from your eyes.
You're not. There might be some,
I'm not doing tiers.
but you're not doing tiers. But what does it say about that?
It says about finishing the raw long edges only of the upper and lower tier pieces, using the longest stitch length on your machine to sew a line of gathering stitches.
That's it. Yeah.
Along the upper edge of the upper tier piece.
So you'll be doing that once, because you'll have that one attachment there.
Okay.
Which is if in effect you're doing one tier.
Yes.
So you're doing one, attaching the bodice and the one tier with a gathering stitch. So they're saying you can do this yourself. You can do hand gathering and then gather it. You know what I mean? Like you do
like a tacking
like
stitch.
a tacking stitch.
Yeah.
You can gather it with that, or you do the largest stitch you've got on your machine, and then you pull that. They usually say to do 2 rows. Did it say 2 on that one?
Does it say 2 rows? No, it says a line. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can do it with one line, makes it less complicated. But most of the time I've seen them, they say to do 2 rows of that long stitch, and then you just, where obviously with any stitching you're going to have a thread on both sides.
Okay.
But you just pull the threads just on one side. You pull them and then obviously pull the fabric one way, the thread the other, and then you get your gathers.
Yeah.
And then you just do it until you get to the width of the fabric you're
bodice.
attaching it to.
Yeah. So it does show here, sort of gathering round, doesn't it?
That looks like an armhole, is it?
Does it look like an armhole?
Where's 14?
Oh, you see, it goes across. The pictures go across,
Yeah.
not down.
So no, that's the gather. Look there.
Yeah. So you've got the stitch there,
Yeah.
and then they've gathered it so it fits onto the bodice.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And then we've got sewing the sleeve. So this is the sleeve.
Yes, the sleeve.
Okay, so with the right sides together, pin the sleeve together, aligning the long side edges. Sew, finish the raw edges, press, repeat on the other sleeve, because apparently you'd prefer to do the same.
Do you?
Yes. I might go mad and have one long one and one short one.
Is that what it says?
Repeat with the other sleeve.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously, that's the sad thing. I mean, they've got to be quite basic in some ways, and
absolutely.
and sometimes write it like you're stupid because, yeah.
We are. Yeah. And then with the right side together, aligning the sleeve head back section to the back bodice. So you're basically here, aren't you?
Yeah.
So you're making sure you're getting it right here.
Yeah.
Pin the sleeve to the armhole edge. Armhole edge.
Yeah.
Starting at the underarm,
Yeah.
cross seams, and easing the fabric as you go.
Yeah.
So you want to try and fit it all in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When it comes to doing that, I'll sort of show you how I would do it, and just again, it's just from experience, but
yeah, hand tack in place it says.
yeah.
So finish the raw edge, press, repeat for the other sleeve.
Really? Right. So we've got two sleeves the same. That's good.
Yes. So here we have an elastic cuff option
Which
and a hemmed sleeve.
If you yeah. I mean, obviously the elastic cuff is the long sleeve, and the other one is just hemmed, which is this one.
Yes, and it's got the gather bit there, isn't it?
Well, that's only gathered because of the elastic, I think, isn't it? I can't say, the picture's too dark.
Yes, it does say 16, so yes, you've got elastic.
Yeah.
Because it says attach one end of the elastic to a safety
That's
pin.
it, yeah.
Which we're not doing.
No.
So we're just doing a bit of this.
We're just doing a simple hem.
Yeah. Fold over and place a 4 centimetre hem at the sleeve edge. Stitch. Remove the sewing machine table to insert the sleeve. Oh yes, of course you do.
Yeah.
I was thinking,
It's
why
got-
is it
it's got-
telling me
it's-
to
it's got
remove
a-
them?
It's got a name, isn't it? When you take it off the table. I don't know about that. I might have to look that
It
up.
just says remove the sewing machine table to insert the sleeve.
Yeah. A lot of people are lucky enough to have one of those machines with a huge table, haven't they? Like the Jukies and things, they've got a big table, whereas mine's only a little one.
Jan would love it if somebody'd like to send her one of those.
Oh, I'd love a big industrial machine, but I'm not sure if my loft floor could take the weight, to be honest.
Right, hem the lower edge of the dress with a small 1 centimetre hem. Stitch on the button at the back neck to match the loop.
And then your dress is ready.
It's interesting, isn't it? They've got finished length.
Mm.
Well, I think that's a very personal decision, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what they're aiming at. But obviously, you'd look at that, that's what they're saying, but then you've got to look at how long you actually want it.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, it's quite likely, because you're short, that their finished length may be too long for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's why we've already done that, haven't we? We've done that bit. We've measured 70 centimetres
I
from
wanted it
under.
quite long.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, that's quite a long. I think it's quite long. Well, it's just on the knee. Her one.
Yeah. Well, I want
was
mine
you wanted
much
it longer than that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to.
I don't normally get my knees out.
No, you don't really, do you?
No.
Not very often.
Even in the summer, I'm a bit reluctant.
Yeah. But do you think if
understood
I wasn't
more.
around, do you think now that you could do that?
Yes, having read it through with you.
Mm.
Yes. If I'd started on my own,
Mm.
I'd have gone, I don't understand this at all. But you make it sound straightforward.
I mean, I'd probably confuse matters in some ways because I'm saying what I would do, not necessarily what they've said. But I'm trying to say it in a way that, in some ways, they make it sound complicated when it's not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So once we get started on that next time,
Yes.
it shouldn't take long to put together. But we have just done what I never do. and I never read the pattern through,
No.
or very rarely. I go to the bits I need.
I do for knitting as well.
Yeah, I go
don't
to the
read
bits I need
through.
as I'm going along, which it makes sense if you can. I'm saying that the last couple of times I've read the pattern through, I don't tend to read the patterns through, and you
Yes.
should,
Yeah.
because otherwise you could go wrong. But then that's not unusual for me to go wrong. But there's confidence if I can go wrong and usually put myself right. As long as it's not, I've not made a bad cut or something.
Yeah.
It's
But if you were maybe doing something like that for the first time, and you didn't know you needed interfacing, and you'd get halfway through it and have to stop.
been there, done that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from
Yeah.
that point of view, it's quite handy as well, isn't it?
Right. So I've got another complicated edit to do here, but hopefully we haven't confused you. But I just wanted you to show you. Obviously, it's Sharon's first time of properly going through the pattern, what she thought of it, and the way I see it, and hopefully it's explained some things. But we'll find out
really
whether I've
useful for me.
we'll find out if I've made it more complicated when it comes to sewing it in the next episode. So we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.